FearScape Media Network, exploring the unknown, one podcast at a time.
Hey everybody, Stefan here. This episode is sponsored by the great folks over at Box Mountain. Box Mountain is a subscription box service that has my favorite sub-box yet, the Cryptid Crate. You see, Josh got one of these for his birthday, and I was super jealous because it was packed full of merchandise pertaining to cryptids. The box he received first was all about the Flatwoods Monster, which of course is one of our favorites, and it had a t-shirt, a book, a patch, mug, and some awesome stickers. So I checked out the price to get one for myself, and let me tell you, it is well worth the value. These make excellent gifts for yourself or even friends that are cryptid lovers as well. Now, if you use the coupon code FearScape, you will get 25% off the first month for any new subscription or 10% off individual purchases. So go ahead and head on over to fearscapepodcast.com/cryptidcrate now and get yourself one today.
The SCP multiverse is under constant assault, and destruction can come at any moment. Therefore, having just one database is a folly the Foundation can no longer accept. Join Dr. Kevin Milgram and SCP-073, Kane, as they create an oral history of the SCP Foundation in Memories of Kane, an SCP story, hosted by Daniel Doremus. For should the Foundation fall, the unkillable first murderer of man will live on. New episodes drop every second Wednesday of the month on the FearScape Media Network. Visit fearscapemedia.com for more information.
Thank you for tuning in to FearScape Paranormal Podcast. We are on a journey to understand and to discover the phenomena that seems to exist all around the globe. We invite you to join us on this journey into the unknown.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another fantastic episode of FearScape Paranormal Podcast. We are here to enlighten and possibly frighten you. This is your host, Stefan Gearhart. I am joined, as always, by the monster that Frankenstein, the doctor, actually created, Josh Rutledge. How are you, sir?
I was doing pretty well. I had to oil my left arm the other night, but otherwise,
watch out for fire. I know you don't like fire. Fire bad.
Yeah, fire bad. Fire definitely bad.
Fire is bad. In the book, you went up to the Arctic Circle up there. Did you find the Hollow Earth? That's
well, yeah, actually, I did. There was an entryway there, but it was small, and I was too big to fit through it. So I detached my left index finger, and it went as far as it could. But alas, there's no ears, eyes, or nose there, so it really couldn't tell me anything.
Yeah, gotcha. Now that that's out of the way, we've got a really cool episode. This has kind of been on our bucket list. You've heard Josh talk a lot about, and me as well, the documentary Lights in the Sky, available on Amazon Prime, that he stumbled across. And we are very lucky to have the writer, director, producer, the whole nine yards of Lights in the Sky. Krista Alexander is going to be with us tonight.
The one-woman band for Lights in the Sky.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the band, Krista Alexander and the Lights in the Sky.
Well, I just think of the old school, like the person who was like had the kettle drum and the cymbals on the knees and the harmonica, and it's like the whole person is the band, so.
But yeah, we're very, very excited to talk to her about this as we love the documentary, and we're going to get some insight and go deep into some weird stuff as well and see how she feels about it. But before we get to that, let's get moving into our segments of the week, which we'll get to in a second, because I just want to remind everybody, hey, don't forget to rate and review this show. Okay, just want to put that out there. I'm going to shove it down your throat. Okay, well, sorry, Josh. Sorry.
Whoa.
Sorry,
Back
Frankenstein flashbacks, man.
Oh my
no,
goodness.
seriously, feel free. We would love for you guys to rate and review the show. Wanted to say that a little bit early. It was one of the biggest things you can do to help us out. So let's get into our first segment of the week, which is Psychic Word of the Week.
And now, the Psychic Word of the Week.
Psychic Word of the Week comes from the Encyclopedic Psychic Dictionary from June G. Blitzer, PhD. Rest in peace, honey buns. We have, I didn't flip through the pages this time. Josh actually said, go to 456. And so I opened up to 456. And the first phrase that I saw here was partial impersonation. So that's what we're going to go with here. Says, to allow an etheric world intelligence to intervene and take control of one's body and physically move parts of the body. Medium is slightly aware of movements, occurs in a trance state, happens during a learning process of full impersonation, takes place in many seances before full impersonation is accomplished, allowing both entities to synchronize with each other in a healthy manner.
So it's like something comes in and only moves your right arm, but full impersonation is they have control over the entire body.
Yeah, that's what I think, which is interesting because that's kind of like what me, you, and Santosh were talking about in some regards about channeling, right? You know? So we'll talk about that because we've got some experiences we want to share in Creepy Catch Up, and we'll talk about that then. But yeah, very, very interesting. That's the one thing I love about this. Is that we always find something that either fits with the guest or fits with our Creepy Catch Up, and it is purely random. I promise you guys, it's so random.
I just closed my eyes and I was like, go to 456. I
flip through the pages and I just literally, no matter how big or small the definition is, I grab the first thing that grabs like my eyes. You know what I mean? So very, very interesting, especially what we have to talk about. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on. I have a little bit of spooky news for you. So let's get into spooky news. All right, so spooky news. Now, we've talked about this a little bit. I'm not sure if we've actually talked about it very much here, but I know we talked about it on Astro Stew when we record. Oh, which is not out. It'll come out next month. So we may not have talked about this at all. But the new UFO videos that are out there that the Navy has kind of come clean with. And so this story, the headline, this comes from foxnews.com, comes from says pyramid-shaped UFO spotted by the Navy may be the best the world has ever seen, filmmaker says. Jeremy Corbell is quoted as saying, this is probably the best UFO military filmed footage, certainly that I've ever seen, but I also think that the world has ever seen. So as we're getting closer to disclosure date, here's another video that comes out, right? And this one has these pyramid UFOs. So here's what it has to say. The Pentagon has confirmed the authenticity of newly leaked video and images showing multiple UFO sightings by U.S. Navy personnel as the government prepares to release a highly anticipated first-of-its-kind report on UFOs this summer. An 18-second video shows what is described as 3 pyramid-shaped UFOs hovering over the warship USS Russell at night in July of 2019 off the San Diego coast. At one point, the pyramid-shaped crafts reportedly hovered 700 feet over the tail of the Russell. This is the first video the public has seen from the July 2019 incident in which mysterious UFOs described as unmanned aerial vehicles reportedly harassed at least 3 U.S. warships during military exercises over multiple days, at one point matching the speed and bearing of one destroyer for 90 minutes while performing brazen maneuvers. Months earlier, An FA-18 pilot reportedly used his cell phone to snap photos of 3 different unidentified aircrafts off the coast of Oceania in March, including 2 UFOs dubbed the Metallic Blimp and the Sphere. The unidentified aircrafts captured by the pilot in 2019 were able to remain stationary in high winds with no movement beyond the capability of known balloons or drones, according to MysteryWire.com. I can confirm that the referenced photos and videos were taken by Navy personnel. Department of Defense spokesperson Susan Goff told Fox. The UAPTF, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, has included these incidents in their ongoing examinations. And the video and images were leaked to a filmmaker named Jeremy Corbell. He's the guy that made the Bob Lazar Area 51 and Flying Saucers documentary, as well as leaked to our favorite person, George Knapp. Corbell and Knapp independently confirmed the leaked documents are unclassified images that were part of a series of classified briefings intended to educate members of the U.S. intelligence community about UFOs traveling in restricted airspace. And this just goes on and on to talk about more of it, but it's absolutely phenomenon. And he talks about he's not able to debunk it. He's not able to do anything like that. But this was something that was added into the mix in terms of getting ready for the disclosure doc. So it's pretty fascinating. It's a pretty cool video. I mean, I got to say, it looks pretty rad.
Yeah, it's I mean, the description of pyramid is very spot on. I mean, It does not look like the typical triangle craft that people report as a triangle craft. It very much looks more 3-dimensional.
Right. So now we're getting into Stargate, right?
Right.
And
exactly.
The Project Montauk Egypt stuff where they, a lot of these old ones say that the pyramids were crafts. And so it's interesting. Here we are seeing this again.
Well, I mean, Stargate even went as far as to say they were just landing pads, right?
Right.
The movie Stargate, not
the crappy
project.
show.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say the project Stargate.
I'm just kidding.
The show was spectacular. I'm just gonna say that.
So, but needless to say, it's starting to come across as if these videos that we're seeing are getting better and better, that are getting leaked. And I think this is all part of it. If we go into our conspiracy theory heads here, that, they're getting close to disclosure, that we're going to get more and more of these videos, I think, in the next couple months before that, so that when stuff comes out, people are like, oh yeah, we've seen that on news.
So a new theory that I have around disclosure is that the official Congress delivered report will be subpar, but either before or after that, an unofficial report will be leaked that'll have far more detail, and they'll use To the Stars Academy to distribute it.
Maybe. Again, we could also be at a point where it's not going to be subpar. And it's
That's
just
true.
With all the sci-fi movies and everything we've had, just like we talked about before, that people are just going to be like, oh, well, yeah. Well, that's neat, because they're not going to come out and say it's aliens. That's not going to happen.
Well, no.
And so basically all they're going to do is reiterate what they said before, is that yes, there are unidentified things in the sky.
We need $3 trillion to go continue to investigate it.
Yes, because it could be China. It could be Russia.
It's probably the Nazis in Antarctica. That's probably what it is.
Exactly. But yeah, so very, very interesting. I'm very interested to see what else leaks or comes out over the next couple of months.
Do we have a date for that? Do we know what that date is?
Still no official date.
Huh.
But they're just saying sometime in the summer. It was supposed to be 90 days, but I think we're pretty close to already being past that.
So. I thought it was 6 months post the signing of the bill, and the bill was signed towards the end of January. Yeah. So that puts us into like June, July.
Yeah. So we'll see. We shall see. But yeah, so let's get to the cool part, which is Creepy Catch-Up. Got some cool stuff to talk about.
Creepy Catch-Up. Creepy Catch-Up. Y'all, it's creepy.
All right, Creepy Catch-Up. We haven't had Creepy Catch-Up in a minute because we haven't had anything happen. However, you came out to Arizona and hell broke loose, all of it. Just every bit of it.
Yeah.
For your second trip, you came out here.
Hell did break loose, actually. I mean, I think it slipped off.
It slipped off. Something that we did is, you were here with your family having a good time and just, visiting like tourists do. But I was like, can we go out to the middle of the desert and go look at UFOs? Because when you were here last time, it was cloudy the whole time.
Yeah.
And you were like, yeah, I can make that happen.
And it was cold, and like we didn't want to sit outside.
Right. Well, this time the weather was perfect.
Yeah.
And I just kind of got somewhere like 40 minutes north of where I'm at, and I found Table Rock Mesa, or just Table Mesa. I can't remember the name of it. It's on I-17, and I found a road pulling off.
Yeah, one of the busiest dirt roads that I've ever.
That was the whole point. Was like I was looking for just a boring ass road. It's a dirt road, so I was like, cool, ain't nobody gonna be here. It looked like it was in the middle of nowhere, and it was. But my God, did we have so many cars coming past
7 or 8
us? Dude, we got
cars
valley fever from all of that dirt in our throats.
Flying past us, man. I tell you what.
So, because we were gonna go into this big pull off like area, but there were like people there was somebody in a SUV totally drinking and possibly doing stuff, so we didn't want to sit in there. That would be awkward.
And let me just say, when you pass someone on the side of the road on a dirt road, it is not necessary for you to then quickly accelerate so that you spin more dust and rocks out those people.
They almost every one of them did it. Like that was no one slowed down.
No.
Like they all sped up. I was like, y'all are jerks. Because we're sitting there on the side of the road. I brought some lawn chairs. We're sitting behind it. We're just trying to look at the stars, which, by the way, amazing because the mountains were right below. So it blocked off all the city light, if there was any. Yeah. And it was just spectacular.
Yeah, you could see a little bit of glow from the city, but not too bad, that far north. So
yeah, and the mountain, I said, looked like a miniature version of the one from Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It was really cool. But anyways, we were like, so we sat out there for a long time. We talked. Josh wouldn't sit down because he was scared a scorpion was going to crawl up his leg. And we're sitting there and we're just UFO hunting. And at the same time, we were like, hey, you want to do some Estes? And then Josh was like, well, I've got this thing I've been doing. I'll let you kind of explain.
Yeah. So it's really weird. It's happened. This was probably the second time that it's happened when it was out there. But you call it a channel. I don't know that I would call it a channel, but because I feel like I'm awake. Like when you channel, you like go in, like you disappear.
And again, I'll say, not everyone goes into a trance when they channel. I go into a trance when I channel. Like I said, the guy that channels Bashar, he does not go into a trance. It's on. So there you have a very, and I don't mean to be rude, but you have a limited view of what channeling is, right? Okay. So you just have, from me, your perspective is that. So and we're still figuring it out with Santosh too, because Santosh kind of agreed with me. So
I'm pretty sure you just called me ignorant, but that's okay. I'll take it.
I did, but only because you have not gotten that knowledge, information yet. So
you're not bothering me. I'm just giving you a hard time. Okay. But anyways, so so before I came out, like I said, I had a similar experience where I felt like I was talking with Indrid Cold, which.
This is important because, I want to reiterate here, we've got Wristwatch going on, which is our Patreon site. We've had, some emails from supposedly Terry Wrist, that has really led us to some very interesting things, which we'll talk about here shortly. But it's also reinvigorated the whole Indrid Cold idea, and there's this theory that Indrid Cold is out there. Tanya even talks about it. She can connect to him through telepathy. You can kind of speak to him through your mind, and you've been trying that, and so far it's been oddly successful.
Yeah. So while we were out there, I said, hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we, instead of going into full Estes, I put one earbud in one ear, just so I had some. I felt like I found a channel that was mostly static.
Right. Yeah. I told you white noise would help.
White noise. Left one ear open, and I said, let's just try and see if you can have a conversation with Indrid. And I will admit that although I do remember most of what was talked about, it feels like I'm remembering a dream. But
Sign of a channel.
We recorded it.
Yeah.
And I have gone back and listened to it, but he definitely dropped some interesting tidbits.
Yeah, so the way you did it, so you've done 2 recordings recently, which we're going to put both on wristwatch, I believe, as well as my Estes session, just because that's kind of where it's heading right now. The first one, I asked the questions. So that's what we did out in the deserts. I asked questions. The second one you did, you actually asked the questions and were able to respond, which is why I brought up the partial whatever that word was. It was because I feel like part of you, like I feel like you were able to channel half of your brain while your other half stayed very conscious, and they were both active at the same time. Because you're like, oh, well, I feel like a telephone, he's able to speak, and then I say it, and I'm like, no, you're speaking in real time, which means that he's speaking through you. Or just as your wife would say, really good improv. But
which I am not. I'm not an improviser.
But anyways, while you were out there, and we don't want to give away too much, but I'll let you say what you wanted to say about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, he did well. So, I guess I don't know how far into the conversation that you were having with Ingrid, you saw the UFO,
right?
UAPs.
Well, I was letting you say what you needed to say before I got to that.
I don't remember what I was.
Yeah, we don't want to give away. Like I said, we want to save this for our Patreon, for our members of Wristwatch, to dig into the mystery with us and help us find some answers there. But yeah, during that, I'm watching the sky. And of course, earlier there was a UFO that I thought was crazy, and I was like, "Oh wait, that's an airplane." It got me. I got scared though for a second.
That one we both got, I think.
Yeah, but this one, I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, these 2 stars that were just sitting in the sky start moving. They'd been there a while because I tend to watch the same area for a long time, and mostly it's because I'm lazy and that's where I'm facing at the moment. But I'm sitting there, I'm talking to Ingrid Cold, and I'm just talking. All of a sudden, these 2 stars start moving, and they're moving in tandem. So they're actually one in front of the other. They're moving like one is has a trailer behind it, right? So it's moving behind it. And I was like, I'm sorry, I know you're with Indrid, but wake up. I want you to look. And you look up, and you're able to see these 2 lights in the sky moving together. And then all of a sudden, the first light, the one in the back stops. The second one keeps going, and then it blinks out after 5-10 seconds.
Well, and it's interesting, if thinking about the recording or the conversation too, I think you had just asked Ingrid how old he was,
and he laughed,
and he laughed, and then that's when you saw
right, and I saw that, and I woke you up. And so the interesting thing is we saw that one light blink away, and we checked our radars, later, everything. I couldn't find anything, but what the other interesting thing is that one that was in the back that stopped, it stayed there the whole rest of the night. It was there the whole rest of the night. I looked up on my star chart thing. I could not find a star that was supposed to be there. So I'm not sure what it was, especially because it moved, from my perspective, 2 feet across the sky. It's just, it was mind blowing. It was really cool. And it's crazy that it seems like 2 of the best sightings we've seen so far has been together. So,
so then, we did, I don't remember, something like 20 minutes or something, but it got crazy for me towards the end. I was just so cold. I mean, I don't know why.
Oh, yeah. Your whole body started shaking really, really bad, which is why I ended it. And to me, psychically, that shows me you not being able to maintain the connection, like you were having trouble, because I wasn't that cold.
When I listened to the audio, there's a point towards the end where Ingrid says, "I don't know how much more Josh can take." So
very interesting.
Yeah.
And then I did an Estes session because I knew I was ready to channel. I was already feeling it. But what happened was really interesting because I ended up channeling 2 other.
Three total.
3 total. The normal one who I think we've established is Grigori.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is my normal channel. And then 2 more, even one was a female. It was very interesting for me to listen because, I'm tranced out. I'm gone.
Yeah.
And to hear these very distinct voices, it almost reminded me of that movie Split. And I was like, am I crazy?
Well, and what the audio doesn't pick up because of where it was placed in proximity to you is like halfway through your channel, this like donkey off in the distance starts going freaking crazy, like and he's just going on and like just freaking out. And I mean, it just reminded me of in my backyard that time when those coyotes were going just crazy.
Just crazy. And even when we were Shane, those coyotes went crazy.
Yep.
So very interesting. Like I said, we're gonna get these up on wristwatch as well. I would like to try to transcribe these as well as some of our older ones as well. I'd like to transcribe. But needless to say, it turned out to be a cool night because it was like an hour and a half of nothing happening, and then all of a sudden it's like when like here we go, we're getting into meditative states, and all of a sudden there's lights in the sky.
Yeah. Well, and it's it is interesting, and I would say that if there's any of our fans who are listening who are a part of Wristwatch and maybe wanted to transcribe some of that stuff for us,
let us know. We will give you the raw audio. I know, because I'm trying to find a program, but it's not cheap.
No, and I've like the programs where you load the file. If the file's not like pristine, it doesn't usually turn out well. You need somebody to listen and type out what it is.
Yeah, but I want to go back all the way back to the very first time I channeled, and I want to transcribe everything and take.
Well, I'd be interested in go back to our very first Estes, which was outside Waverly,
and start doing some searches and see what we find. So,
really cool. but talking about wristwatch a little bit, Terry, quote unquote Terry Wrist, the person that's contacted us before, he contacted us again.
We did. We got another email at like 3 a.m. or something. Yeah. I don't remember whose time zone that was, but
I mean, it was at a time when I was dead asleep and you probably had like just gone to bed. But I mean, it has also some very interesting information. Apparently, he liked our Astral Stew episode about cannibalism.
How about celebrity meat?
Yeah.
Alternatives, man. But yeah, and it's I'll tell you what, it's awakened us. And don't forget, we've got Olaf Phillips working with us as well on this. Yeah. On our chat. And it's like, good man, this has really kicked some doors open for some things. My goodness. Because he's basically like, y'all aren't going in the direction I wanted you to. Here's a little nudge. Here's some names. Here's some other things. And it's crazy that we've gotten these names not only from supposed Terry, but from Injured Cold, from the sessions Josh has done, and they connect to things that we're already looking into, like full first name, last names. Like, this is some crazy shit.
So, I mean, we were looking into something. I think this might have been from the second. No, I think this was still from the first bit of messages, but we found it was like so Mylar. So it's a tie back to Hellier, right? So the Mylar balloon. Mylar is just a brand name of the material that is a Mylar balloon, is what it's made out of.
Right.
But it is very similar. The properties of Mylar is very similar to the properties described from the Roswell crash. Being like a very tensile strength, strong material, but also like flimsy, kind of like aluminum foil and stuff. And so it really makes you think. The Roswell crash happened in 1947. The material that Mylar was patented in like the mid 1950s. So is that a byproduct of the 1947 Roswell crash?
Yep. And like we talked about too, right after Roswell, we get the Air Force. And one of the main people that Terry pointed us towards had his hand in creating the Air Force, had his hand working with balloons. It's all... All crazy. And then the weird swords thing.
Yeah. So one of the lines was like, the further you get from the truth or something like that, the truth will come at you like swords. And we at the time just thought it was some sort of a colloquialism.
Or a tarot reference, because there was already another tarot reference.
But after digging into a name that I got from Indrid Cold, after digging into that, I came across an individual who worked with MUFON, was also a university professor back in the 90s, did several papers for MUFON, and his last name is Swords.
Yep. And there's some more connections and things like that you got to join Wristwatch to find out. But I'm just telling you, that's a little.
But, I mean, it's this rabbit hole is quickly expanding, and even there are clues upon clues upon clues that we are still just beginning to find. Yeah,
we've got numbers that are in the emails that Olav is like checking into. One of them we found out turned out to be like a number 2 NASA. A specific line at NASA. I mean, it's all crazy, man. I'm just telling you all. This is nuts. And if you're just a listener that's sending us all this stuff and you're not terrorist, keep it up, because this is really crazy cool, and we're digging it. We love and you'll hear Krista talk about this in the interview, but boy, as people, we do love our drama, and I am eating this up. I love it, and I want you guys involved too, but we wanted to not have to take every episode to talk about it, and this way you guys can help us raise a little funds to keep things going. So
and just something that I want to throw out there. So we've been talking with Alan Greenfield about the possibility of this Terry being the same Terry that he interviewed, and I still hold true to my theory that this terrorist might just be kind of like a Dread Pirate Roberts type situation. With it's whoever needs to be terrorists to involve the right number of people. But one of the things that Alan said is, hey, if you get an opportunity to ask this Terry what make and model of car he was driving when he had the interview with Alan, that would be something that Alan would know, that would help him know that this is the same Terry. To me, I don't, like I said, I'm not too hung up on if it's the same one or not. I mean, it would be cool if it was, but it's still feeding us some fantastic information that is leading to all sorts of connections with other stuff that we were already looking into, and other things that we're getting from channels and so on and so forth. So
and so if you want to join Wristwatch and join the folks that are there and see the emails and see the stuff that we're going to be putting out there slowly, you can either go to fearscapepodcast.com/support, or just go straight to patreon.com/fearscapepod. So either of those, get on there. And like I said, it helps us do more, much like my birthday fundraiser I got out there. If you're friends with us on Facebook, you can find that birthday fundraiser, trying to raise some money. We are doing a lot more traveling, and I need to get to Somerset. We're trying to hook up with our boy Nathan Isaac out there. And so any travel expenses will help and all that stuff, as well as trying to put together a little bit of a TV pilot. Hint.
And really, we're getting some direction from Terry and from Indrid that we need to go to Colorado. So
so we want to check out Boulder, Colorado, and some other places. So I'm just saying, anything helps, and it's for my birthday. But anyways, let's go ahead and move on, because I really want to get to our interview with Krista Alexander. But I just want to say, you guys, this terrorist stuff is crazy. So let's go ahead and take a break, and we're going to get right back to Krista. So stick around.
Ghosts in the Attic, Spies in the Basement is a paranormal true crime podcast.
If you enjoy tales of horror, lore, and the unexplained,
murders, mystery, and so much more,
tune into our bi-weekly podcast.
With us, your hosts, Anna Timperley
and Lindsay Behe, coming March 17th.
Through the FearScape Media Podcast Network.
Available on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, and wherever else you may listen to your podcasts.
Good evening, dear friends. I am your headmister, Stefan Gearhart.
And I am your co-mister, the man with no name, Lance Wayne.
And we are the Misters of the Dark.
Join us as we discuss everything from horror books, films,
and even pretty princesses. Join us every other Tuesday in our dilapidated mansion. You never know what's going to happen next.
Only on the FearScape Media Network.
That's a good laugh. All right. Thank you guys so much for sticking around after the break. As promised, we have Krista here with us. We're so excited. Lights in the freaking sky. That's all I want to say is normally we kind of hit up a person and we're like, cool, we've heard some good things. We're going to watch your thing to get prepared for you coming on. But this was, we watched it and we were like, we have to track her down. So yeah. So welcome to FearScape.
Awesome. Thank you. That's an awesome introduction.
That's all I do well. So good night, everybody.
Yeah.
No, seriously.
Thanks for tuning in.
Josh hit me up. It's been forever now.
Yeah, a couple months
and he's like, have you seen Lights in the Sky yet? And I'm like, I think so. And I had not seen it. I was thinking of something else. And then I finally sat down. I was like, oh, I'm going to check it out. And then I was like, oh my God, why didn't you tell me about this sooner? He's like, I did.
Oh, that's awesome. I love hearing about that. I'm in my own little world here, so I don't really know how people are perceiving this. It's so strange.
Well, we have been spreading the culty news of
Yay.
like the last 10 shows. He's told every guest that we've had on the show.
That is so cool.
And we've been preaching about it, telling people, because it is such a it's something I would have never thought to do. The closest thing that I thought of was there was a woman, and I forget this every time. There was a documentary about a woman that has been filming UAPs and UFOs and lights in the sky since like the 1960s, using this old school film recorder, and she has had the most amazing things caught on film. And so that was what I originally thought of. I was like, oh, is that this? And no. And then it's like, it's taking what she was trying to figure out to the next level is
right.
About it. It was like taking a microscope to it, essentially.
So my wife, I am so far tumbling down the rabbit hole, and my wife is still very like on the edge, like, you're gonna fall and hurt yourself, so I'm trying to introduce her to things that I think are things that she won't be able to process away, right? So she won't be able to find an explanation for that in her skeptic mind. And so after watching Lights in the Sky, I sat down with her and I was like, you need to watch this with me. And so she's like, sure. So she's kind of crocheting while she's watching it, and I'm like, are you paying attention? Like, yeah. And so I stopped. She's like, you need to watch the next 5 minutes of this. And so she did, and it was right in the part where you slow it down and you get like the pixelated bugs and stuff.
Yes.
And she was like, oh, how is that happening? And I don't understand that. And so like that was my finally you see something.
What's crazy about that part of the film is that it's really the one thing that I have no theory for whatsoever. It just does not make sense. I don't know if you guys, I shared an article with my Facebook group yesterday on called Lights in the Sky, and they just found out that if you put electrons inside of a superconductor, that the electrons convert, or I'm sorry, I want to say revert, but somehow form on two-dimensional planes.
Wow.
Which is insane, because the insects look like they're on some sort of two-dimensional plane that's like some sort of shell surrounding Earth. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense.
It made me think. So today I was driving to pick up my kids from school, and I live on kind of a long street that's just bordered with trees and stuff. Mm-hmm. And kind of, I don't know, let's say 50 yards ahead of me, there were some trees, and they were, the wind was blowing, the leaves were kind of moving, but it looked very shimmery, like almost like when you have heat rolling off the pavement on a really hot day. That's what it looked like. And I was like, are my eyes messing with me? Or is that, is this like a glitch in the Matrix situation? Is this, the rendering in front of me is messing up, like in that whole idea that we, Elon Musk has talked about, that whole idea of we live in a virtual reality, and so it's just really, with your capture, with your findings of those kind of two-dimensional pictures or icons or whatever that you found, and then the shimmering thing, and then the virtual reality, it's just really got me thinking, is that the case? Are we really just all plugged into some big computer network, and it's just trying to keep up with how fast our brains are processing things?
I'm a huge fan of the simulation hypothesis, but I think people like Musk and a lot of people like him, I think their initial assumption maybe of the simulation hypothesis is that there is some sort of outside external creator that's, playing us as if you were some kid in your room playing a computer game. You know what I mean? But I actually don't think that at all. I do think that we are in some sort of simulation hypothesis, but I feel like we are the creators.
Yeah.
Well, so it reminds me of, I don't know how many geek friends out there, but if you ever saw Stargate SG-1, the series, Stefan hates it, I know, but it was a show that was based off the movie Stargate that came back, 1999 or something like that is when the movie came out. But they stumble across a world that's just beautiful. And there's like a dome, kind of like a biodome type facility, and they go inside, and there are all these people plugged into these machines, and so they get the crew that's on planet, they get trapped inside the machines, and they find out that they're all living in a simulation. Their world was basically ending, so they built these machines to go in to save themselves and keep their minds active over was supposed to be a couple of 100 years. They got trapped in there for like 1,000 years. And so then it was like try to figure out how to get them out of this simulation, all that kind of stuff, because the world had recovered from whatever the natural disaster was supposed to be. But it really makes me think, is that something, did we put ourselves in here, right, because of some natural disaster? And so we've been interacting in this world for so long that we don't know that there is an outside world.
Well, I have a big problem with the external alien thing. I mean, I really do. It just doesn't make sense to me, because the nearest galaxy is 25,000 light years away.
Right.
And if they were us and we were them, essentially is what you're implying, then those are biological creatures. And you can't have a biological creature travel 25,000 light years at all, you know what I mean? It's like, well, maybe they were billions of years advanced from us, and it's like, but it just doesn't add up.
Well, right? It's not even billion years advanced. I mean, it's maybe they left billions of years ago, right? And they have had families that have grown on these ships, and we're seeing generation after generation. I mean, who knows?
Who knows? To me, that sounds more like sci-fi, but gosh, you're right. Who knows?
Well, the other thing is we tend to think of things in linear distances, right? So we think of going from where we are in our galaxy to where we would be potentially in the next closest galaxy is a linear movement. But when you're dealing with, fourth and fifth dimensional, with time and space, there may not be a linear movement. It may just be a matter of folding space so that you blink out one place and you appear in the next.
Sure, or wormholes or black holes have different physics than we
right, but I feel like the only thing that could travel through something like that would be pure photons, not actual.
Well, and that comes down to, we also think as humans that they need to be, corporeal, solid beings. I mean, what if they are photon beings, right?
Exactly. Yes, that's a good theory. I like that
hard
theory.
Light, right? There's that in sci-fi. There's that theory of hard light, that there are a species that are photons, that are light, or these different things, and they can make their bodies hard when they need to, which could also be why some of these things disappear when you're trying to look, right? I mean,
right. They just kind of blink out.
That's what makes them unexplained.
You know what, though? I firmly believe when I first started, starting on this journey for me was not anything that I had ever had planned. My dad watched UFO videos when I was a kid, so I I was open to the idea, but I didn't know who Travis Walton was. I didn't know who Dorothy was. In fact, I didn't see Dorothy's film. And in fact, for the people who are listening who might not know, that first story you told about the woman who filmed on an old 8-film camera, her name was Dorothy.
Right.
And I didn't see her movie until after I saw my own. And that was the very first time I had ever been introduced to the idea, right? So I totally lost my train of thought on that, actually. That's thinking about Dorothy.
I'm glad you reminded me. Yeah, Dorothy. Yeah. That's what she does. She is so sweet. All I can think of her is I'm like, I just want her to hug me.
So I'm totally going off track from where we were going, but I have to say this. When I think of Dorothy, I think that she's someone who people look at and say, there's something about Dorothy. There's something about Dorothy that these lights like. And so they're attracted to her soul or spirit or aura or whatever you want to call. But for me, I'm really starting to think further that I don't think it is a person-related thing. I think the lights are there all the time, but it seems to me the majority of people think that it's an individual basis.
Right, and it could be, and I just looked her up, so it was capturing the light, which is why I got it confused with yours, and it's Dorothy Izot. But yeah, it's like, why not? It's just energy, right? I can totally vibe with that energy can, and it does. Energy can form and move dependent. Hell, we could look at psychic energy or things like that. We talk about Miyamoto's stuff where he sees the water crystals changing based off of different emotions being looked at it and different things like that. That energy could do the same. Though I will say one of the things we talked about video games earlier was that some of those pictures that you found, they look like old Space Invaders, like Atari things was immediately what I thought. And I was like, it's like, is it copying, right? I don't know.
Well, the beautiful thing about the lights in the sky, and scientists actually do study the UFOs, they just call them plasmoids. And so the lights in the sky are plasma. And what's beautiful is that multiple experiments have demonstrated that plasma can actually be described as a living thing, which is crazy. It can communicate, it can procreate, it has all the definitions of being alive. And so everything that I've seen in the lights is that they do have emotion, they do have consciousness, and they are not made of material mass. But I have a new theory, and I'm creating another documentary, and I have a theory that goes even deeper, and I'm super excited about it. But it's basically the next stage of plasma. When you put a ton of pressure on elements, then they all of a sudden, like the most pressure you could ever imagine, like the inside of the Earth times 30, right? Or 300. It becomes something what's called a superconductor. And a superconductor, they can do this with helium, and they're trying to do it with something called deuterium. And I'm not going to get too far into it because it's my next documentary idea. Right?
Right. We'll talk about it the next time.
What's interesting about superconductors, and you can research this, is they can create their own magnetic field. And it's another state of matter. And a state of matter isn't linear, it's a circle. So once you go into what's a superconductor, where you kind of start looking like metal, which would describe all the metal ships in the sky, you can hop between all the other 4 states. So liquid, gas, invisible, basically, right? And then plasma. It's really beautiful. And then if you have this consciousness, it's crazy. It's absolutely insane. I love thinking about it. I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast today, actually, where he was talking about Bob Lazar, and Bob Lazar describes this metal ball, right? And he says that he goes up to this metal ball, and he was told by his superiors that this was something that fell out of the sky, right? Can you look at this and tell us how to work it? So Bob Lazar said it was a silver ball, if I remember correctly, and every time he would try to put his hand next to it, it would be pushed away, like it was a magnet. That's exactly what you would expect a superconductor to do. So it's a very interesting theory. I love it, and I hope more people kind of grab onto this new way of seeing reality, as opposed to, hey, these are aliens from Andromeda, and they have long, beautiful blonde hair, and they abduct our women and rape us, and you know what I mean? Like,
those are angels from the Bible. They did that.
Why not? You know, maybe they are. Maybe they are. Maybe that's just our sad or inhibited, I want to say sad, that's not right, our inhibited way of trying to make sense of the world around us.
We talk about it all the time. John Keel talks about it all the time. The old UFO sightings, stuff like that, they kind of called fairy sightings or different things like that, as if they used what their mind could kind of figure out to explain what they were seeing.
And also, I think that it probably is true that it doesn't have to be one thing, right? It can be a superconductor, a plasmoid. It can be a physical craft. It could be interdimensional entities. It could be extraterrestrial entities. It could be ultra-terrestrial entities. Until we can prove that everything is one thing, it stands to reason to keep an open eye, so to speak, as to what the possibilities could be.
Well, here's the thing. I have looked at a lot of videos of the lights in the sky, right? I have never seen anything that remotely looks like a ship carrying a being. It just, and you know what? I have people email me and they're like, aliens are real, and yeah, okay, fine, there's lights in the sky and you got on that, but you know what? Aliens do exist and I know it. And it's like, okay, well, send me a video where it looks like a ship. Send me a video where it looks like nobody can do it. So I feel like in 1901, there was the first sci-fi mention of a creature from the moon. I can't remember the name of the author. And he described these creatures as what we would now consider grays.
It was
and
H.G. Wells. We just talked about it recently.
Exactly right. And then that was the very first description ever of what we would call grays. Mm-hmm. And then the same thing happened from another sci-fi author a few decades later. And then a decade after that, we have the very first mentioning of grays abducting human beings, which is Betty White and her husband, Betty and Barney White. Yet they didn't say that they were abducted by grays until after hypnosis. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm friends with a real hypnotist, and I asked him, I said, will hypnotism like make you remember things that you forgot? And he goes, no, hypnotism is not for memory recall. Now, the same thing with Travis Walton. He didn't say that he was abducted by these creatures until after hypnosis. Now, this is a very, very, I was told by somebody once to not say this in public because it's going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, right? Especially people who think that they've been abducted before. But I do think that if we're really looking at this from a scientific inquiry and we really truly do want to know truth, we have to be able to ask those types of questions.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you bring that up. I'm actually reading Walton's book right now, and he just got to the point where he's talking about being abducted. And it is. He's like, here's my hypnosis session. Mm-hmm. So it took place then. But last week we had Ralph Blumenthal on, and he's a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. And he just wrote the book, The Believer, and it's about John Mack. And John Mack was a non-believer. He's a psychologist, and he went into research abductees and contactees because he wanted to be like, okay, what's really going on in your head, guys? And after years and years of research, he became quite convinced. He never really had his own experiences, but he became quite convinced that they did indeed have these experiences. And it came from a very, very science background. It's quite interesting, and I highly recommend that book by Ralph Blumenthal that goes really deep into that. And it even convinced Ralph, who's a pretty big skeptic himself. He's never seen anything, but just all the research made him take a second glance.
I will definitely look into that. And I do want to say that just because I feel like it might be a coincidence that it wasn't until after hypnosis and sci-fi pop culture that people started seeing grays, there are historical documents that describe being abducted, such as Ezekiel.
Yeah, I mean like I said, when we talked about it, wherever either on the show or our YouTube show, they mentioned that pop culture really drove that. It's the same thing when Jaws came out. All of a sudden, everyone was seeing sharks in the water all the time. Anything that hit them or bit them was a shark. So yeah, I definitely don't disagree with you at all on that point.
Right. But like I was saying, just because now, so Carl Jung, actually, I'm a huge Carl Jung freak. Mm-hmm. And he heard about the UFO thing, and he was like, okay, there's something to this. So he goes over and he starts interviewing all of these pilots and credible sources, trying to figure it out. And by the end, he realized there's some truth to this, right? But why are they grays? Why are they being defined in this way? And his theory, which I agree with, is that this is how mythologies are born.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just, again, like we said, our inhibited ways of describing reality. So we think about Ezekiel's wheel, and in the Bible about the lights from the sky that came down. Mm-hmm. But they didn't abduct Ezekiel. I know there was somebody in the Bible who got abducted. I can't remember who.
Well, I mean, Jonah got abducted by a whale. So.
No, I know you're talking about someone was taken up into the sky.
Got to see heaven and all these things. I don't know.
One of them guys. One of them geek eels.
Jeremiah.
Jeremiah.
Bullfrog. Was he a bullfrog,
shut up!
though?
I hate you.
Anyway,
I think it makes a lot of people uncomfortable when I start talking about a different theory of the UFOs, because it has become almost kind of like a religion for a lot of people.
For sure.
And I would not have known that before. I wasn't that into the UFO world. I was just calling it as I see it, And it really, really bothered people. And I started realizing the depths of how deep this goes. I just had some guy comment on Facebook about being parents with young kids and telling them about aliens instead of trying to hide it from them, right? Trying to freak our kids out. And he said, my mom, she was obsessed with these grays, and all the books on the bookshelf had all these scary gray aliens. And I was freaked out, and I was laying in my room, and every night I could have sworn they landed. And, it's a surprise I'm a somewhat normal adult now. And it just goes to show how deep into that psyche this is.
Well, something that, talk about a different theory, something that I've been really evaluating lately is there are a lot of similarities between the what happens with an abductee when they're taken, and also with those who experience astral travel. So the body becomes rigid, almost paralyzed. They have a sense like they're floating, being taken, moved through a wall. Oftentimes they see a bright light and entities moving around them. And when you read and talk to people who have done astral travel, and then you look at people who have been abducted, there are a lot of similarities. And so I think on some other Facebook group that I was on, I posted something to that effect. And man, I was attacked hard. And I'm not trying to discredit anyone. I'm just trying to think about, there are some similarities here between these two things. Are people being abducted, or are they being abducted through astral travel? Is it an astral abduction, so to speak, an abduction of the spirit, of the mind, and not so much of the body? I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with asking questions. I'm not trying to offend anybody. I'm just trying to ask questions
it sucks.
And explore opportunities.
I started this group, and I have people who, I started it for scientific purposes, because that's just I'm a really rational person, and that's just kind of how I think. And then that's how I made the group. And then I started getting all sorts of people. So I have my Christians who are on there, and they have their beliefs. And then I have my like skeptic scientist guys. And then I have my hardcore UFO people, and getting these people all in the same group and conversing and stuff, you start realizing that people, I guess just what I had already said, that this is truly a new belief system, just like Carl Jung said. I mean, he called it. Well, and it's gotten worse since then.
Well, that's what I was going to say. And Mac kind of approaches this stuff too from a psychological point for that reason, because people want answers to why they feel the way that they do. And sometimes people don't like researching either. And so they kind of take something, it's enough to fill in a gap, and it explains things, and it does. It becomes like religion, because when you say something against that, you take it as almost you're saying it against them personally, right?
Yeah.
And we try to look at everything as even though we are believers in different things, we still are very open to everything that's out there, because until there is 100% definitive proof of something, I need to be able to come at things from as many different angles as possible. And sadly, most people, especially Americans, are very singular when it comes to something. It's like they get stuck on something and they don't want to change, and they want to sit in it. And that's tough for not only belief systems, but politics, everything. So.
Well, and you want to come up with another theory of why some people are kind of hesitant to look at this from a different perspective, is because it's boring.
Right.
All of those sci-fi films and the grays. Ooh, that's exciting. I'm going to get abducted. I want to please choose me. You know what I mean? And then you're like, oh, actually they're just another living creature in the sky. That's it. They're not here to take you, and they're not colluding with the government, and, but for me, I feel like that's even more interesting, because it's closer to the truth, and it's actually more beautiful because it is the truth, but human beings, man, we love drama. We thrive on it. And so if people want to continue having those theories, and that's great. I have a lot of friends who firmly believe that there's humanoid aliens and spaceships flying around, and and I'm open. You know what? I'm never say never. If someone sends me decent evidence, that is definitely something that I would consider.
So what do you think, and I'm just going to shift gears here a little bit, because I know we're talking about lights in the sky, but how do you think this all kind of translates to Bigfoot and other cryptids that people see
or
kind
even
of around,
hauntings, right?
or hauntings. And, one of the things that we're constantly looking at is how does all of this phenomenon, so to speak, how is it all related somehow? How are UFOs related to Bigfoot, related to ghosts, related to poltergeist, so on and so forth. So if this is all somehow related, that's a big if, but if it is, how do you think lights in the sky and the entities, the energy entities that exist, would fit into the theory of like Bigfoot, Sasquatch, all those types of things, where people have, I think, probably more physical evidence for like Sasquatch and that sort of thing, with footprints and tree structures that have been built and that sort of thing, more so probably than UFOs, so to speak, for evidence.
I actually have to disagree with you there, because I feel like video evidence of the lights in the sky and the serious amounts of documentation from all of the countries in the world for decades now. How much more evidence do you need? People see these lights all the time.
I'm not arguing lights in the sky.
Evidence.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about, you said that if somebody could present physical evidence of a craft, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I'm just saying that there's probably more physical evidence for Bigfoot than there is for physical evidence of a craft. So how do you feel it all fits together?
So personally, for me, I thought Bigfoot was just a fun thing that, Bigfoot, let's go, it's a fun thing. And then I started getting more into this paranormal world, and I started realizing, no, people actually really do believe that there's a Bigfoot, right? And I just never took it seriously. I was like, that's just too far out for me. I don't know. But then I watched this documentary recently called the 411 The Hunted. I don't know if you've seen it or not.
I've seen the first one, not the hunted one, but I've seen the first one. It's just called Missing 411, and then Missing 411 Hunted is the sequel to it.
Okay, I didn't know there was a first one, so I'm definitely watching that.
Basically goes over the same stuff. It's just that I think by the time they got to the sequel, they kind of had a better idea of what was going on. Okay. The first one really plays this idea. It's like, are there serial killers? Like, what is this? People are going missing in national parks and things like that. But when you get to Hunted, it gets a little more,
Yeah. And what's crazy is that a lot of people think these lights are like our saviors. You know what I mean? But there actually are a few stories from multiple parts of the world where the lights are somehow associated with something you don't want to be a part of. Mm-hmm. And that's another scary prospect too. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question about how the lights in the sky are related to Bigfoot, if I had to make up a theory after watching the 411 documentary, and again, that's all the research I've done on Bigfoot, yep. So I'm completely inhibited here, but I would say the lights in the sky are able to mimic sounds that we might associate with creatures, which isn't too far out, because I did just read an article a couple of weeks ago that the military has created a defense system invention, I guess, I don't know, where they can create plasmoids, okay, lights in the sky, that with a long distance wave beam machine can make that light in the sky sound like a human voice. Okay, so this is actually possible. We can replicate this in the lab. So why can't the actual lights in the sky also use waves? Now, again, I don't know. I don't. Yeah. I have to see the footprints. I have to see the videos, and I haven't. So
no, I like that though, because I'll tell you two things. So one really interesting thing when you kind of look at an atheist skeptical view of the Bible, right? You go back, you learn a lot of things about how sound can travel through fire and things like that. That possibly the burning bush could have literally been somebody half a mile down, and fire will amplify sound, which is really, really interesting. And so there's theory that, plasma and different things like that as well can amplify sound. I also used to work for a software tech company that worked on augmented reality. And we had a military contract. And one of the things that we worked on with them was these devices that while they were in their augmented reality in this warehouse, to them it looks like, say, Vietnam, there's also these devices that would move around that can throw sound into different areas and to do different things and to mimic things, but it may be all the way on the left over there, but it'll sound like it's coming from behind you. Like it's way above my pay grade. I don't know how the science was or how it was done. I just got to see some of it in action, and it's insane. And that was a military contract where they gave us some of the information to build upon. So I kind of am definitely with you that, like, yeah, I've seen some of that already, just in a different medium.
Right. I think audio is a huge part, because you want to talk about evidence. I've seen a lot of videos where the audio just is not explainable. Again, we're talking about the 411, The Hunted again.
Yeah.
That audio in that film freaked me out, man. I had to watch it like 7 times in a row, just over, and I'm like, just what the hell?
I did the same thing. I ended up putting in my earbuds to my TV, and it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like,
I know. Well, it's funny because I'm like, I was just bored. I was like, I'm going to watch something, right? I don't like to watch fictional shows. I only watch documentaries. So I saw this thing and I was like, whatever. My husband says I'm too obsessed with lights in the sky, so I need to watch something different. And so I'm just gonna watch this, like, people going missing thing. And I started seeing all these coincidences, and I'm like, shut up, that's kind of like the lights in the sky. And I was like, I really am obsessed with this, I need to stop. And then by the end he was like, it's lights in the sky, and I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, you should definitely check out the first one, Missing 411. It's not as cool as the second one, but it'll definitely fill in a couple blanks, like and that's kind of how it happens for us. It's like, my wife is like, can we not watch something that has to do with the paranormal? I'm like, sure. And we turn on something and it ends up there's a ghost in the house or something. She's like, I hate you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't know.
It's everywhere. I was looking at lights in the sky, and I had all of a sudden I was just inundated with emails and people wanting me to edit their videos. And at first I was like, yeah, sure, totally, I'll edit your video. And by the end of it, I was like, oh my God, I don't have a life. I can't edit all these videos. So I don't anymore, unfortunately. Sometimes I will, but mostly I don't. At this point, side note, me looking at lights in the sky and showing people what they are is kind of in my past. Now I know the lights exist, and I know what they look like, and I know how they behave. And so now my next venture is trying to figure that out.
Right. So you've got you've made your observation. You have a hypothesis, and now you're going to test.
Right. That's what I said. It's like Stephen Greer. It's like, man has 3 documentaries that comes out every year, and they're all just the same information. It's like,
all UFO documentaries are the same information.
Yeah,
it's
in
ridiculous.
A lot of ways. Yeah.
And people love it. They love it. And it's like Stephen Greer's films. I think the reason why his films are so popular is because he did that thing where he had all those people go to the Senate or whatever and give their, their disclosure, I guess. And that was great. That was huge for the movement. But now, and again, somebody else told me, don't say this in public. And I don't really care too much, right? I think Stephen Greer has either knowingly or unknowingly created a cult.
Yes, that's what I've been saying the last 4 or 5 episodes. I said, he's like David Koresh, like, because I'm watching the way that he raises money too. Like, because I live in Phoenix, and so I think he lives in Scottsdale, because almost all of his big events take place in Scottsdale. And they're like $5,000 just to like have dinner with him, and I'm like, what? This sounds like Tammy Faye Baker and them.
For $75,000, he'll come and hang out with you for the night.
I know.
Yeah, I mean,
and people are like, he's great, I love him, and it's like,
and it's just all these rich white people that are like, yes, give him all the money. And now I live in Phoenix, so Sedona's not far. They're all up there, and don't get me wrong, I like Stephen Greer. I like that he's taking a positive outlook as opposed to a threat. But still, it's like, man, I get this cult vibe off of him, that it's becoming this religion in a different way. Because just like you said, he's like, no, the lights in the sky, they're benevolent, and we can make them happen. And we've tried doing the CE5 and haven't really had any experience. He's like,
there's a secret cabal in the government, and they're against us, and they know how to do free energy, and they're keeping it from you, and we need to join together. Donate now. PayPal accepted.
As he's driving his Tesla.
And I know how to contact the lights, because I'm spiritually advanced, and this is how you do it. Just pay me now and I'll tell you. Oh, and if you can't, it's because you're unworthy.
And this is Miss Cleo. She'll also read your tarot too.
And people eat it up. Why? I think, and I was talking to my husband about this, I think it's because he puts hundreds of thousands of dollars into his films. And my graduate degree is in communications and media management, which is just another nice way of saying propaganda. And I know, which sounds bad because I'm a documentary filmmaker, but if you want to be seen as a professional and if you want people to take you seriously, you got to look the part, right? Yeah. And so I think the simple fact that he's a white man, right? I really think that has a lot to do with that. Who has money? He's educated.
He was a trauma surgeon.
He tucks his shirt in and he stands up tall, right? And he puts all of this money to have like these cinematic style documentaries. And so all the people are like authority figure. Everything you say is correct. No questions asked, you know?
I never thought
and
about that.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
Well,
because I mean, even Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, I was like, this is really well done. Like, yeah, you do look at it as opposed to most of the docs that are on there. Well, it's just the same old clip show, essentially.
Yeah. I think there's also probably people who, and I'll use myself as an example. So who were raised rather religious. So I was raised Southern Baptist, and who somewhere around the line started to really question their upbringing and question what was real in the world and the universe and such. And then maybe they had an experience. Maybe they saw some lights in the sky that they couldn't explain. And so that really took them away from that kind of religious upbringing that they started with. But they still had the predisposition, if you will, to attach themselves to a religion, to a thought process, to a concept. And so then you have Stephen Greer, who comes along and takes the UFO experience and makes it spiritual.
Well, I mean, and already you're looking at the Applewhite from Heaven's Gate. That's essentially what him and whatever the lady was that they did Heaven's Gate was. They were a UFO cult. That's exactly what they were, and that's why they killed themselves at Hale-Bopp, because they said the UFO is here. It's going to take our spirits into the spaceship, and we're finally going to meet Space Jesus. Like I said, there's a really great doc on HBO Max. Highly recommend it on Heaven's Gate.
If you've not seen it, or have HBO Max.
But yeah, they were a UFO cult. It's exactly what you just said. And they had all these people that were spiritual, grew up, they lost all that. It was the late 60s, early 70s when the movement started, and they were looking for something. Sci-fi was hot, and they jumped right into this, and they were a crazy ass cult.
Yeah. And so go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't think Greer's going towards a suicide pact. Like, I don't think that's in his path.
Who knows, man?
Or is he?
Yeah, it's like, who knows, dude? Because dude talks about being depressed all the time and how people around him has died, that he thinks the government took out his wife, and all these other people around him. He was the only one that survived. Who knows? You never know. No one ever thought Marshall Applewhite was going to be like, hey, let's kill ourselves. Like it came out of nowhere because he was in a point of desperation, especially if you watch the documentary. And I listened to a podcast about it too. He was at a point of desperation where he was losing members. He didn't know what to do. The T or Doe, or what they call themselves, T and Doe, she died, but she was kind of the spiritual leader. He was always kind of the business guy, and he just didn't know what to do without her. And that kind of came out of nowhere, and it kind of brought people back, and it gave this kind of like hardcore aspect to the cult. So you never know. That's what's scary.
Right. And I think a lot of people don't believe. Okay, so we have to look at society from a very objective perspective, right? Okay, we have to kind of take our emotions outside of that, and that includes with ourselves, right? And you have to look at society as, for example, data. And I'm a huge, like I said, I'm a Carl Jung nerd. And the thing that attracted me to Carl Jung initially was his theory on personality. And that's a really, really taboo theory, and people do not like it. And actually, most people who think they know that theory actually don't, okay? So, which is very interesting. And then when they do know the theory, they don't like it. So basically what Carl Jung said, and this is what Myers-Briggs is based off of, was that like 80% of the population is just like not thoughtful. They don't have any real thoughts. They're very easily persuaded. They're just kind of predictable animals. And that's when, the Germans were like, we can control that.
Yep.
We can control that.
There's another documentary. I wouldn't tell you on HBO Max. It's called Personality Tests or something like that. And it talks all about that.
And so people don't want to admit that they might be a part of the 80%. That sucks. Who would want to be a part of that? No one wants to admit that. But then one day your mom's killing herself because she thinks the aliens are coming, right? And she's giving you the Kool-Aid. And whatever happens, you know, it's insane. And it's so interesting when you really allow yourself to kind of get a bird's eye view of our people. And that's another reason why I don't think the aliens are our ancestors or our cousins or our parents, right? Because humans are nothing on this planet. We're just the creatures of the moment. But even in that regard, we're nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And one day we're going to be gone because the planet can't sustain our needs. And that's just how it is, you know? And then there's going to be another species that does well on the new Earth. And gosh, who knows? I think the lights in the sky have been on this Earth way before anything that looked like a Homo sapien.
Well, God did create light, right? If we believe in that. That was like one of the first things he created. Says, you know, God said, let there be light, and there it was. So
there it was. And you think about how long the dinosaurs were around, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah, really crazy. I mean, and phases of them. You know what I mean?
I know.
You're like, oh, I love T-Rex. Well, T-Rex was only like this part, you know, like an inch of the full time scale of dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's when they became a spacefaring race and went off and populated Mars.
Right.
Yeah. I do hear some interesting theories of like Native Americans, because I noticed that the lights in the sky were appearing around a lot of Native American ground. So I thought, you know, I'm going to look into that. So I did some research into the mythologies, and I don't know if you guys have heard about the first world, second world, third world, fourth world from Native American. Yeah. And what's interesting is they describe these beings who live in the earth who took humans, I guess, and brought them into the earth, and they called them the ant people, which is kind of interesting because the Greys kind of have that, you know, ant.
Well, that gets into the Shaver mystery too. You're getting into Hollow Earth, the Darrows, Taros that lived underground as well. It's all kind of sounds similar, you know?
Yeah, gosh, there's so many beautiful mysteries, and it's just so overwhelming, and I don't think it's possible for any one person to like wrap their head around it.
No. Well, and, you know, you were talking earlier about are the lights in the sky are not really a personal thing. They're not attracted to one person in particular, but they're always there. And that's something that we have talked about quite a bit over the last probably 6 months, is that probably all this stuff is always here. We just don't see it, or we don't interact with it because we are tuned out to it, if you will. We haven't expanded ourselves to be able to see all the stuff that's actually occurring and interacting with us on a daily basis.
Right. It makes me think of this video. You've probably watched it. It's a fun little skit, I guess, where these kids come onto a basketball field and they're all wearing different colored jerseys. There's two teams and there's a basketball, and you're instructed, count how many times the red team throws the basketball or something like that, right? And so I'm like, I'm totally gonna kill this. Right? I'm like focusing really hard, and I'm like watching the ball perfectly, and then I'm done, and I'm like, okay, I know the answer, I got it right. And then they're like, did you see the giant monkey running in the middle of the team? And I'm like, what? What giant monkey?
Exactly what you're talking about.
No, I didn't. And gosh, you know, if I can't see a giant monkey, how the hell am I supposed to see little lights, you know?
Yeah. I know exactly.
Or anything else. So
I used to do that. I used to teach summer camps and stuff too, and I would show that video to the kids because they would be just blown away. Right. They're like, "You're showing a different video," and I'm like,
But to be fair, I am always looking up at the sky, and it kind of pisses me off because it's like I have to live vicariously through other people because I don't think the lights like me, apparently. Right? Yeah. I can't ever see them. I've seen a couple of strange things, but with Stephen Greer, you know, he's like, you just gotta meditate and picture yourself on the planet, and they'll find you. You just gotta ask them. And I'm like, okay, where do I live? The mountains are to my west.
Yeah.
How do I look like from above?
So I've got a trick for that. You go to Google Earth and you zoom all the way out.
Right.
And then you zoom all the way into where you are. And so then when you picture it, you picture that Google Earth image in your head going all the way into where you are.
I'm laughing so hard right now because the whole concept that I'm going to like GPS the lights is just so funny to me.
No, hey guys, I got it. It's Google. Look.
West of 95.
Now, what's really bad is Google Earth is what, 6 months old at any given time. So,
yeah.
There might be a Kmart there now, and I don't know.
Yeah, the lights in the sky are like, this is wrong. Where is she taking us?
It's like my.
Go to the big oak tree and take a left. So.
I took we went to Prescott, Arizona 2 weeks ago, and I took my nephews. I was like, they're like, I want to go UFO hunting with you. I'm like, all right, let's go. So we went up to the mountains, and my one nephew's super scared of everything. He's like, a serial killer's gonna get us, just scared through the whole thing. So we're laughing, but we're driving back home after not seeing anything, and we're driving back home, and I have this app that's a fake app, but it like pulls up. I'm like, guys, you guys want to see if there's any ghosts on the highway? And they're like, yeah. And so I'm playing this, and it's like, it just brings up different words and stuff like that. And they're like, oh my God. And at one point, like, it says something, and it connected. Like every time my youngest nephew would say something, it would go, but he didn't realize it's because he saw the red bars going up, which meant a word was coming. He didn't make that connection. So his older brother was like, you notice every time you say something, it says something. And so something said it was like the next to die. And my oldest nephew leans into the phone and he goes, his name is, and he says all four of his full names. He says his entire address. He says where it's at. And then he goes, top bunk. And so I laugh because that's what it reminded me of, that GPS. It's like he narrowed it down so much that he told the evil ghost to get his brother that he lives up on the top bunk.
So it's adults like you why our children can't dissociate reality from fantasy.
Absolutely. I'm just carrying on the tradition that was handed down to me.
Yep. It's so much cooler that way, isn't it? So much fun.
I told them, I made sure to tell them all the stuff afterwards, but man, for those 2-3 hours, it was pure joy.
Yeah. As soon as you start going at the quantum level, different electrons are moving around with neutrons, and this is how they behave with high density, and you're like, what? No, actually, they're here because they can talk to you in your mind, and if you close your eyes at night and breathe slowly, they'll come to you in your room. And it's like, maybe I'm just being too cynical because it just doesn't. Yeah, sometimes I wonder if that's true, because so many people see these lights. Okay, this is what I have to say. The reason why I keep talking about it is because I have this group, and I have a lot of people who see these lights often. They see them consistently, night after night after night, and I can't ever see it, right? So it begs the question,
right?
Why are you seeing it, right? And they all say, oh, I meditate, or I'm spiritual, or something like that. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, if that's true, how does that work? That would mean that if we look at it from a scientific perspective, which is a bit boring, they're giving off a certain frequency that the lights can pick up on.
Sure.
And how strong would that frequency have to be to compete with all the other frequencies in the area to go all the way up to these random lights in the sky, right? For me, I feel like it has to be topography and location. I don't know.
But you're also, again, thinking about the frequency that it has to travel in our very linear thought process of space and time.
Right.
It could be that it's a frequency that travels in a completely different dimension that these lights exist within. Right. I mean, so I think to think that what we see around us every day is the only thing that exists, and so everything that happens must exist within that same plane. I think maybe that is part of the problem with people who try to evaluate these things as they're happening in our space, rather so we are experiencing it in their space. For a brief moment of time, we are experiencing it in their space.
So like quantum entanglement, I think, is the only other explanation for that. And or are you saying that we can't even hypothesize because it's not even something that we could possibly entertain?
I think it's probably the latter. I mean, it's probably science that we haven't grown to understand yet.
Okay.
Or I mean, I come at it from a different viewpoint and even think about you have to sometimes think about too, how many things have you seen that you immediately discounted too, right? And so maybe that was either A, legit something, or B, that's something that those other people did not discount, right? They see every light and say, oh my God, I saw something. Whereas Josh and I have definitely seen some lights in the sky. But the very first thing we do is we jump on to check our satellite checker to see if there was a satellite in the sky. We check flight trackers. We check everything that we can to immediately take out whatever we can take out. But then you, like I said, you have people on the other side that any light that's in the sky is that light that's in the sky. Where we know probably every night it's because they're seeing the International Space Station every night or whatnot. But then the flip side to that is that I have a theory, and I'm not a scientist, so it's bunk, but I have a theory that I kind of feel like if the paranormal does exist, that it's one of those things you can't see until you've seen it. And I know that sounds stupid, but it's like once you see it, it's almost like it makes it where your brain can accept it. Like I've said to Josh 100 times, it's like you get a Jeep, all of a sudden you see Jeeps everywhere, and you're like, good God, why there's so many Jeeps? Or like they talk about the Native Americans when Columbus showed up, that they probably were not even able to register these giant boats. They didn't even, they weren't seeing them. But then after that, they saw them all the time. Like they could see anytime a boat would come, they were able to handle it. So I kind of think about it like that too. And it's kind of, and in a way for some people, especially if it comes to hauntings or something like that, if it's legit, it could be a curse. It's like, cause you can't turn it off,
Yeah.
Well, and I'll just go back to the science that we don't understand yet. I mean, look at 200 years ago, we didn't understand the science that we have today. And 200 years before that, we didn't understand the science that we had, 200 years ago. So science is ever evolving. In jokingly say it, but today's magic is tomorrow's science, because that's the way that it's always been through history. A lot of the magic that was being conducted at the time, quote unquote magic, like they labeled it magic then, we wouldn't label it magic now, right, is science. And so who knows what will be the science of tomorrow, 200 years from now.
Yeah, it's insane to think about. It's absolutely crazy. I have a theory that I sit with personally that feels right to me. You know what I mean? It fulfills or satisfies my rational thoughts and also my more spiritual side as well, which is that, and it sounds so new agey, but I think that's what quantum theory, and for me, the lights in the sky indicate this, is that we really are in some sort of, we are all energy. I know that sounds,
no,
we're all one.
I believe
right.
I'm with you.
And we are all one. And I think that's insane. And we are the universe experiencing, and we are the universe creating itself. And the more we look, the more we'll find, because we're creating it.
Yeah, and the more and more we're starting to see science starting to move towards that as well. Like that, was such a new age theory 50 years ago, but now there's finding some basis to it, that energy is legit. There is. And then there's things that like antimatter, and it's just that we don't know anything about. We still don't know what the hell black holes really are. Like it's
right. Or even if that's what we're looking at. I mean, it's really just a theory.
Right.
And I think for me, when I was, 10 years ago, if someone was like at a party and had mentioned quantum theory, I'd be like, what, dude? What are you talking about, quantum theory? You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't know what's, but now it's like, oh, okay, I get it. And you try to, but you just have to constantly understand. I think for me, I have to constantly remind myself that most people don't understand quantum theory, or even tried to understand it, or even want to understand it. And so at that point, you just kind of have to continue, doing your own thing and taking that into consideration, because quantum theory is scary. And there was a reason why Albert Einstein called it spooky.
Yeah.
And why he had a lot of problems with it. And a lot of people still do have a lot of problems with it. Like some people don't even want to call it a science anymore.
Yeah. We're even getting closer to quantum computers and everything.
But it's happening, right?
Yeah,
it's happening. We're theoretical in a lot of aspects, because we can look at the data and better make hypotheses and see if they come true. But the idea that you can look at something and just by thinking of something, just by observing something, that you're somehow bringing it into reality and you're making it concrete in our physical world, and everything else is just a probability. What? That doesn't make sense.
It's hard to wrap your brain around. Yeah.
But the lights in the sky for me, I wasn't like, I love quantum theory and I'm gonna look at the lights in the sky and put that perspective onto it, right? It was like, I looked at the lights in the sky and I was like, how does this make sense? And then I was introduced to quantum theory, right? Even though I had had an interest in it before, but never as much as I do now. So I think lights in the sky are beautiful. Again, I'm coming out with another documentary. I've only written the outline. I'm not even close to releasing it, but I have a theory that I'm super, super excited about. And it's basically, explains and answers so many of the questions I have. And I think the most beautiful thing and the conclusion I have is that the lights in the sky have the potential to teach us, to show us through observation, if we observe it and actually think about it scientifically and try to understand how it's possible on a physical level to maintain our species on this planet as long as possible.
Yeah.
Right? Because I do think the lights in the sky are demonstrations of free energy. And if we can harness that, if we can figure out how the hell are those lights up there, where are they getting their energy from? Why is it acting like that? How can we do that? How can we do that? And I know, I haven't talked to anybody in the know, but I'm pretty confident that the government knows about the lights in the sky, and they have scientists looking at it going, what the hell is that? Yeah. And writing papers. And I think a lot of our modern technology is from observing the lights in the sky.
Yep.
It's beautiful.
And conspiracy theorists out there will say the same thing, and I kind of agree with them that I think they may have already even harnessed some of that energy, and that could explain some of the other UAP UFO things that are out there, because the energy was already harnessed. They're just not ready to let the world know, because
they're using it for their own
they're using it for their own craft
stuff.
Well, my dad is intelligence in the military. He's in the military and for the government now. And I was a broadcast journalist in the Army. And I guess when you get into the system and you kind of see how it works, I would put a lot of money that the government does not have access to free energy. I think they're trying, and I think they're a lot closer than a lot of people might think, but that's not because they're keeping it secret. That's because people don't care to read the news stories and put it all together for themselves.
Yeah.
Right? But it's there, and it's public information.
Yep.
Well, it's not every day I go out to the Department of Defense and read their press releases. So.
Right. But thank God for Google algorithms, because whenever I swipe left on my phone, it's like the internet knows exactly what I want to read.
That's because you're psychically telling the internet what you want to see.
It's weird, man. It's freaking me out, but I love it.
Well, Krista, thank you so much, man, for taking your time and coming on our show. And God, I really appreciate your perspective. Sadly, it's a pretty rare one in this field. And so it's really nice to see a different perspective on things, and a willingness and openness to check out other perspectives as well. Again, thank you so much for checking us out. Lights in the Sky. You can go to Amazon Prime, other places. Please, if you haven't already heard us preach about it, y'all need to check it out. Is there anything else you wanted to let people know about that they could check out?
I think if you want to get in on the conversation, go join the Facebook group Lights in the Sky. It's a pretty good group, and we're all open and we're not mean to each other. I think a lot of people, what I'm noticing, there's so many people who have seen these lights.
Yes, we're so there. It's fun.
They're so afraid of telling anyone. They don't tell anyone. And so this is a safe place. And I really feel like the more people that come out, the more confidence we can give others. And that's really what we need right now.
Yep. Again, I second that. We have a lot of fun in that group as well. And that's kind of how we feel about all that stuff, is that, so there are safe places. Find them, seek them out, and, see what you can do with them.
Also, thank you guys so much for having me on and kind of being cheerleaders for me. I think that's super cool. And I'm really, really thankful for that.
Oh, yeah. You get that second doggone let us know, because we A, want to watch it before other people get to watch it.
Okay.
And B, we would love to help you promote it, because we love Lights in the Sky, and we're so thankful you were able to do that.
Yay, thank you.
Cool. right. Thank you, Krista.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
You are the bomb. Again, hearing that you are so busy and have all this stuff going on, I really appreciate you taking a slice out of your day for us to have an hour with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. And I mean, if I haven't said it enough, I mean, the documentary is spectacular. I mean, it really has, I think, for my wife, who is, the stereotypical skeptic, it really has, I think, forced her to think about things differently.
Yeah,
So,
well, it's that hard science. That's what we like. That's why we liked John Mack and Blumenthal's book on John Mack, because he was all about the hard science. And I love that I introduced her to that book. So I think she'll really get it. I think she'll really like that book because it comes from that same point of view. But again, thank you, Krista Alexander. Make sure you guys are going to Amazon or wherever you can find it and check out Lights in the Sky. It's fascinating. It's really interesting. And oh boy, I can't wait to see what her next one is.
I know it's going to be spectacular as well.
But we're going to get moving on. I actually don't have a listener story this week. Taking a break from that just this week. You can still send in your listener stories, but after Kang's last week, I'm still processing. And so you can send in those to fearscapepodcast@gmail.com or on any of our social medias or anything. Send us those listener stories. We want your experiences and we love them. But we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Just a reminder, fearscapepodcast.com/support. Get on wristwatch. Don't forget, this week, I believe, is the psychic social experiment. Yes. So it is in 2 days. If you're listening to this on Wednesday, it is in 2 days, the psychic social experiment. There are still tickets available. Scotty Rorick, Keith Age, Rock and Roll Ghost Hunter. It's going to be amazing. That's fearscapemedia.com/psychic. So you can get tickets there, $6. So that's all the schlepping I'm going to do, Josh. I promise. That's it. That's all the schlepping I'm going to do. But we're going to.
I know you dropped it at the beginning of the show, drop it at the end, rate and review. It really does help. I don't know. I think last time I looked on Apple, we had something like 26 reviews, that's awesome. I really appreciate it. But I really appreciate that it's 26 reviews and we're like 4.85 stars. So that's pretty cool too.
That one guy gave us 1 star.
Go fuck yourself. So that, your dad doesn't count.
So he would do that too. It probably was him.
I'm trying to break you down a notch.
Yeah. Your head's getting too big. He would do that, create an account and everything.
So rate and review whenever you can. I will really appreciate it. And really just, we see our download numbers every episode grow, and we really appreciate how much you all are sticking around with us and in for the long haul, and how much you share the pod. It really means a lot to see our numbers grow, because that means you all, our listeners, are sharing with your friends, your family, your coworkers, whatever the case may be.
And we love your opinions too. I'm going to throw this out there. If you got a good idea for a topic or someone that you think would be a good guest on the show that's not like super hard to get, let us know, because we'll look into that. Those are things we're always interested in, new topics. There's so much stuff that we don't even know about that we're discovering all the time. Let us know something cool to look into. We'll see if we can take a look at it, or at least talk about it on Astral Stew. That's for sure. But we're gonna get out of here. Thank you guys so much for listening to FearScape Paranormal Podcast on the FearScape Media Network. This has been Stefan. Keep your eyes on the skies.
This has been Josh. The truth is now.
And remember, folks, hold those blankets tight. Things tend to get spooky when you're listening to FearScape. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
We hope you have enjoyed this guidepost on the road of high strangeness with us. And we thank you, as always, for listening and joining our caravan to the weird and unknown. Please consider supporting us as we continue our journey to find the answers we all seek. FearScapePodcast.com/support.